In this video, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know when buying a pre-construction home, and I'm going to be highlighting the 3 most common mistakes that I see people make when getting into these types of investments. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Dimitri with eXp Realty, and I recently did a video where I kind of went over my buyer consultation, a phone call or a video call that I typically have with any first-time home buyer who approaches me, getting ready to get into the market. I prep them on things they need to have ready, things to keep in mind, things that they're going to go through in the process. And I wanted to go over a very similar video for pre-construction condos because it is a totally different process. For anybody who is looking to get in touch with myself for a free consultation, there is a Calendly link down in the description below. You can book a one-on-one meeting with myself and we can dive into your situation. Okay, with that being said, let's get into the video. So for those of you who don't know what a pre-construction condo is, this is basically where we are going to be buying a condo that has not been constructed yet. So we would typically have to put down a deposit to the developer, and then they would give us an agreement of purchase and sale, basically saying that we have the right to purchase this condo when it's completed in 5 years' time, let's say. The biggest advantage to this type of investment strategy is that we do not need to get financing on the property until it is closed years down the road. So this typically appeals to 2 types of people. One, investors. Investors typically have large lump sums of cash that they're looking to invest into the real estate market, or maybe they bought so many existing homes that the bank is no longer letting them get any more financing. So this is the only way that they can still leverage their money in the real estate market, have the property grow in value over time, and then they can close on it or assign it years down the road. The other type of person that this would typically appeal to is maybe a first-time home buyer, someone who doesn't have a complete deposit ready. And at that point, we'd be looking for something with an extended deposit structure. Or maybe they plan on having, a new career change, income increase, and they can't get financing now, but they plan on being able to get financing years down the road. This would allow them to invest their money now, let that condo go up in value, and then they can close on the property when they have their mortgage pre-approval and finances in order years down the road. One of the very first things that we look at when narrowing projects down is the deposit structure. A typical developer will require anywhere from 15 to 20% as a deposit in order to hold the unit and give you the opportunity to purchase it at closing years down the road. A typical deposit structure may look something like 5% within the first 30 days, an additional 5% within the first year, an additional 5% within the first 2 years, and then the final 5% at closing or something along those lines. So we would take all the locations that we discussed that you're interested in the buyer consultation, and then we would also put that with the deposit structures that work for your budget, and we would basically compile that and narrow it down to a handful of projects that would work for you. So once we get to this point, we are project shopping. So just like we would for a normal resale home where we narrow it down to some homes in an area and then we go look at the homes and make a decision based on that, we're going to do the same with pre-con, except for we are going to actually go to each individual sales center where we can go inside, we can get a better feel for what the project's going to be like. We can take a look at the model and really dive into where the project is situated on the specific street. We can go over views, all the amenities, dive more into the deposit structure and what we need to acquire this place. And we're also going to dive into the developer, who they are, what they've built, and the type of finishes that the building is going to have. And this actually brings me to the very first thing that you should definitely avoid when it comes to buying pre-construction, and that is buying from a not reputable builder. Picking the right developer is one of, if not the most important decision when it comes to making this investment. It's really important that we go with someone who's reputable. There's so many projects that get canceled, and if we go with a reputable builder who has a reputation for building in the city, they're less likely to cancel projects because they know that if they cancel projects, their reputation is going to get watered down and buyers are less likely to invest with them in the future. Not to mention that it gives us a really good idea of what we can expect for a finished product. You got to remember, we're buying this pre-construction off of floor plans. We don't really know exactly what the finished product's going to look like, but let's say we've been in, 10 York by Tridel. Well, we've got a really good idea of what Tridel builds and all these other reputable builders. So we picked a project that we want to invest in, and now the next step is narrowing down specific units. And this also takes me to the next thing that you should definitely avoid, which is going into the sales center unrepresented. Keep in mind that working with a trusted agent does not cost you anything. And by walking into that sales center unrepresented, you are going up against trained salespeople who are working in the best interest of the developer, not you. Let's face it, in this giant condo, there are good units and there are bad units. And it is a sales representative's job to sell off the entire building. And when they see somebody come in unrepresented, they look at this as an opportunity to potentially move an undesirable unit. When you go in with a real estate agent, they do know that if they don't give you a good unit, that you could potentially take them elsewhere. Without getting into too much detail on specific unit selection, because this is very specific based on the type of project that you're looking at and what you're trying to accomplish. Some general guidelines is that investors typically go after mid to low floors because there is typically a $1,000 to $1,500 floor premium. So every floor that you go up is an extra, $1,000 to $1,500. So for investors, the unit that is on the 7th floor will typically rent very close to a unit that is on the 24th floor. So they're going to go for the cheaper unit because the numbers work out better. Another thing to keep in mind, investors will typically also go for the smallest unit of each property type. And what I mean by this is if you're looking at 1 bedrooms, investors will go for the smallest 1 bedroom. Or if you're looking at 2 bedrooms, they will go for the smallest 2 bedrooms. And they do this for much the same reason with the floors. A small 1 bedroom will rent relatively close to the same price as a large 1 bedroom. But if there's a 450 square foot 1 bedroom versus a 550 square foot 1 bedroom at $1,000 a square foot, we are talking about $100,000 difference in price when they're going to rent for relatively close. So the investors will go after the smallest of each property type, not to mention that they also come with less maintenance fees. If you're an end user and you plan on living in the condo, it could be a totally different story. At this point, we're really going to look at the floor plan and the view that works for you and what you want for your life and your new home. Other things we want to keep in mind when we're looking at specific units is, the functionality of the floor plan. We want to avoid wasted space and hallways wherever possible. Looking at where the unit is situated on the key plate, is it close to the elevators? Is it close to the trash chute? Views, obviously, we want to make sure that the surrounding buildings or there's no new projects going up that would be blocking views, and all these types of things that we will dive into when we're picking our specific unit. So assuming that we found the perfect unit and we want to buy it, at this point, we are going to be filling out a worksheet. This is provided to us from the developer. It's going to have your names on it and basically which unit you would like to purchase. You will submit this with your identifications. And at that point, they're going to create an APS or an agreement of purchase and sale, and they're going to give it to us where we can go for signing. When we go for signing, this typically happens a day or two after we submit the worksheet. We will have to bring our IDs, and we will also have to bring anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 deposit check made out to the developer's lawyers in trust. They will hang on to this. And at that point, once we sign the agreement, the 10-day cooling period begins. By law in Ontario, whenever you're buying a pre-construction home, the developer has to give you a 10-day conditional period. And in this period, I suggest that you take the agreement to a pre-construction lawyer who can break down all the closing costs for you. This is the number one mistake that I see people make all the time, and it's not getting the agreement looked over by a lawyer. And especially for the people who are going in unrepresented, the sales team is never going to tell you to go get it checked out by a lawyer because there is a ton of closing costs in that agreement. Keep in mind that closing on a pre-construction home, there are closing costs like development levies, HST, lawyer fees, etc. And it's really important that we know to the penny exactly how much money we are going to owe at closing. It's also at this point that the lawyer is going to overlook the agreement and make sure that development charges are capped where possible. And if you're wondering what these development charges are, basically how it works is the developer gets taxed from the city and the government in order to build this condo on their land. They're basically saying, okay, you want to build this giant condo, you're going to be bringing 6,000 people to the area. With that, we need to up the sewer system. We need to build sidewalks. We need to build schools, hospitals, all this infrastructure to accommodate this new population. And they are charging the developer for that. And the developer is taking a portion of that and handing it over to the buyer, which is your development levies. After the 10-day cooling period, and assuming that you want to proceed with the transaction, the deal will go firm. And then at that point, you will just be making your installments to pay off the deposit structure as laid out in the agreement. In the coming years and months to the occupancy phase, when the building is actually being constructed, if you decide to sell your unit, you can sell it via assignment as long as it's written in the agreement that you are able to assign it, which is something that we make sure that we do when the lawyers review it. Assignments are a whole nother topic, and I've actually got another video on my channel where I go over assignments in greater detail if you're curious about those. But that takes us up into the occupancy phase. During this phase, you can actually live in your unit or rent it out, but you will have to pay occupancy fees, okay? And occupancy fees are basically comprised of property taxes, maintenance fees, and some interest left owing to the developer. But at this point, you have not closed on the condo yet. Your mortgage hasn't began, so these occupancy fees just go to the developer. They are typically lower than market rent. And I bring it up just to know, because if you're buying a unit on the low floor and you take occupancy first, it may be 6 to 9 months that you're paying occupancy fees to the developer. And this money is not going towards your principal that you are paying for the property. This is literally just kind of going to the developer to pay for those associated costs. Once the building is fully completed, at that point, it will be registered with land titles, and then you can take out your mortgage, get your financing in order, and actually close on the property. At that point, it actually exists, you own it, and then at that point, your occupancy fees stop, and you just take over as if you would any existing condo. So that is basically the process of buying a pre-construction home here in Toronto. Like I said, the 3 things that you really want to avoid is buying from an unreputable builder, going into a sales center unrepresented, and not having your agreement looked over by a lawyer to break down the closing costs. So I hope that helps, guys. If you guys are looking to get a more in-depth conversation to your specific situation, go ahead, click the link down below and book a one-on-one consultation. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next video.